On this episode of Spoilerin Time, it's Justified. That's the last thing we'll spoil. Before that, Zootopia. Then before that, 11/22/63, or most of it, and Better Call Saul. But Brian Brushwood, I'm Tom Merritt. We're going to start with the movie draft.
It's back, baby! Movie draft time!
I'm still a reigning champion of the most recent movie draft.
I mean, some might say that's in a different league, that the only true movie draft is the summer movie draft, and that's going to be what really matters.
I'm saying, it's an equal league. Same number of movies, same amount of money.
Right. So moving right along, if you missed it, this week's Night Attack episode is Bryce did a fantastic job herding 11 different cats simultaneously as we made our way through buying 30 of the top movies of the summer. Each team had $100, and of course we complicated it by having 2 members per team. And this year, the 2016 draft, we got Team Chainsaw Suit, Team Amtrekker, Team Night Attack, Team We Have Concerns, Team DTNS, and Team Cordkillers. And a controversial distinction this year, rather than go in chronological release order, because it sort of added a predictability that was making it, I don't want to say more stale, but just there were certain things that you could always predict, and we weren't comfortable with it.
So just like in the last draft, the winter draft, we went in a random order.
Correct. That's what I'm saying. And it was really, really good. It worked very, very well. The last draft.
There were some oddities. For instance, I don't know, The Conjuring 2 went for $51.
Oh, wait, well, keep in mind.
He wasn't aware. He didn't know the rules.
But he just bid the rest of his money. Yeah. Like, he didn't have any money. He couldn't beat people for the other movies.
Correct.
So
he knew that there were no tentpole releases, and he figured that forget it. And by the way, it was Jeff Kanata. He had $51. He realized there was no way he was going to get outbid on any of the big movies left. So he was like, well, screw it. I'll just buy a smaller movie, and I'll just make sure I get it. So he bid his complete $51, not realizing that by doing so, he changed the game for everyone else to where now, instead of us only having $2 more than him and us guaranteed to get Civil War, all of a sudden we now had $28 more than the nearest team. And so he thought he was going out in a funny blaze of glory, not realizing that he just loosed us to manically, pick up.
Although it was within the rules of the game.
Well, and really all that changed was we got Hardcore Henry, which was going to go for $20 on a taco anyway. So it's not like... On the Chat Realm League, you'll see that Civil War went for $24, making it a really good buy, but Hardcore Henry is ridiculously overpriced at $24. But again, that's I don't think that level of variability or insanity is any worse than we've had in any previous movie drafts, right?
Now, Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice went for $26, and you may think, well, that's ridiculously underpriced, no matter whether you like the movie or not. It made $166 million domestically over the weekend. And the part of the reason for that is this draft, everyone was saving their money. And Batman came earlier in the draft.
Everybody could have afforded so much more, but we were just being frugal. Nobody wanted to jump that high. And then the moment it went, we realized... we've made a terrible mistake. Team Chainsaw Suit is going to run away with this.
So that came out. My Big Fat Greek Wedding 2, which was Amtrekker's movie, came out at $17, which he only paid $8 for. So, it'll probably... That's the kind of movie that may do better than normal in its second and third weeks as people filter into the theater. It's not something people ran out to see maybe on the first week. So it may be worth the $8.
Yeah, until Hardcore Henry Mania attacks.
Well, you got both Hardcore Henry and The Boss next weekend.
Oh, yeah, we do.
This coming weekend.
Where we have blown a third of our budget, $31 going to those two movies. My guess is it's not going to look real good for Team Night Attack early on.
Not for dollar spent, no.
No.
And then The Jungle Book comes out in 2 weeks, which will be Team DDNS's first movie and we will win.
I feel really good. As a matter of fact, if you follow the Crumdom, Chat Realm's ridiculously unofficial movie draft missive, is that what it is? Or
update missive?
Dispatch?
Update memo. Yeah, two things. First of all, they continue to be super funny. He does really, really good writing. You can find it at reddit.diamondclub.com every single week. He's also opening up a Patreon. I don't think he's announced it yet, so I'm breaking.
Yeah, no, he announced it, and I backed it for $13.37 a month.
Oh, that's
because I want it to be elite.
That's pretty good.
Only computer nerds will get that one.
If you've enjoyed his stuff, then now's the time that you can be classy and kick him a little bit of cash for his time.
Yeah, seriously. Match me. I dare you.
Double dog.
All right, we got a couple of movie draft emails. Mike Stewart said, do you think it might be possible to have a graph of money earned versus time for the teams in the summer movie draft? Some people grasp concepts more readily when they're prepared in graphic format, and I think it'd be an awesome addition to the draft. This would make it easier to see when a team gets a big boost and when it's just coasting.
I agree. Somebody could do that. And
do you think it would be possible? We do. Are we going to do it? We're lazy.
No, yeah, but I do know
untalented at graphs.
I believe there's like APIs available at Box Office Mojo or boxoffice.com where they have all of the numbers of how much each movie made per day going back for the entire run. I would imagine somebody who's got some cool kung fu could figure that stuff out and track it against our stuff. But that's
so
a
Mike,
bit above.
If you can do it yourself, let's share with the class. But I'm guessing because you asked that it's not something you could do either, just like us. So hopefully there's somebody out there that can help a brother out. Hook Mike up.
Yeah.
And then one of our bosses said, hey, Brian, Tom, and any guest joining the show, here is a list of the movies in the 2016 summer draft sorted by the frequency picked by the chat realm. It's not surprising that 79% of the chat realm picked Captain America Civil War, since the price of that film seems a little low at $24, while The Conjuring 2 was picked by 1% of the chat realm.
And that one had to be trolling, right? Somebody had to intentionally try to hit last place.
Well, Mike on Crumdum pointed out that one person only picked Conjuring 2. They didn't even spend the rest of their money.
That's funny.
Yeah. But there's a Google Drive link from our boss, if you want to take a look at that we'll include in the show notes.
Maybe we can award a last runner-up award for whoever manages to pick the worst slate out of our stuff.
Absolutely. All right. Let's start off by spoiling Better Call Saul, episode 6 of season 2, wherein we're still kind of treading water towards what looks from the previews to be the first appearance of Saul. I don't know if they're faking us out, though.
Yeah, I think we're a ways from it. We have seen progress, but not a lot. We get this weird, they're fighting, they're fine, they're fighting. We do get the introduction of more and more bit characters from Breaking Bad coming back with full roles. I mean, like, if you played a bit character in Breaking Bad, there's nothing you're happier about than Better Call Saul. Hector Salamanca being totally in control is totally badass. Seeing Mike stand up to him is badass. I actually, out of everything, I thought the Jimmy Kim thing, I was really disappointed not to see their relationship go anywhere. They just went back and did the same thing they did before.
Well, and I think what we're doing here is we're spending a lot of time maneuvering Kim and Jimmy into position to do something unexpected. Or maybe you expect it by now, but do something that would be considered unexpected for people who know them in this universe, right?
Well, so I was just going to say that's a really good point, because I was upset, or not upset, but I was a little annoyed that we saw a second repeat of them playing their little family game, which tells me the third time, by the rule of threes, next time we see them do that trick, get ready for something to go terribly wrong with it.
Well, you have to do that because Kim has now finally come back to, that was really fun, Jimmy. And so they have to do it again. And we spent a lot less time with it this time than we did last time. And it's showing that Kim is softening up. Right? Her ethics are getting malleable here. Jimmy going back to the nail salon because he just can't sleep in that bed in the corporate housing. It shows, how uncomfortable he is with this new life at the law firm. So that's what I mean by, like, we're positioning them to have him go like, yeah, I just don't like it there. And Kim saying, I've realized it's not for me either. And then, well, what do we do now? Right?
Did you call the nail salon's phone number? Ever since I found out that every phone number they show
actually
works.
Try it.
It's amazing. If you call, it's like, hey, thanks for calling the nail salon. If you are calling for your nails, then leave a message. If you're calling for a lawyer, don't leave a message. This is only for nail salon. Beep. And it was great.
That's amazing. And yeah, Mike's story actually is the one that feels like the A story right now. Like it is progressing. He had his confrontation. He outdid them once. And then you think he got sold. Then he kind of faces down Hector Salamanca for the money. But it turns out that he was doing a little judo move to also pay off Nacho. And Nacho didn't even see it coming. And so it's like, God damn, that Mike, he's pretty good. Like he was able to navigate what looked like an intractable situation.
Yeah. And again,
the question is, though, he's going to have to take the gun charge, though. And what's that going to do to him?
I suspect very little. I think he knows what he was doing. I think that he had a plan and it didn't work and he didn't get what he wanted. And so they got out of it. And being a fair and respectable businessman is Mike, a consummate professional. I'm not going to say respectable businessman. He is a consummate professional.
Yeah, that's
right?
perfect.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, that I am still enjoying it, but that's really all I have to say because this was a connective tissue episode.
Yeah, exactly. And although this being our second of them in a row, not feeling the progress that I'd like to see.
Is it weird to call them tendon episodes? They're kind of fatty and chewy and they don't satisfy you. They're gristle episodes, but they connect bones, so you need them.
I need a butcher to get the right words for these. I was thinking more a Chateaubriand episode.
If a butcher could write it and let us know the proper term.
A tripe episode. Is that
Cordkillers@gmail.com. No? Let's move on to 11/22/63. And before, I just want to delay everyone who's waiting for Brian's opinion on this. Hilton from Virginia says, look, Tom, as with every Stephen King book, when it goes to video, they murder the story. I think a lot of what Tom wants to see actually happened in the book. For example, in the show, it's not as evident how time pushes back or how Amberson would react to something happening to Sadie. The book, he does multiple things, including saving a busload of students because time wants to make him late. Also, the multiple attempts aren't present in the show. In the book, he goes back several times. Every time the yellow card man seems to notice him more and more until the card changes color and he tells Amberson, you aren't supposed to be here. They somehow skipped over him going from New England to Florida first and gambling, et cetera, et cetera. He's kind of spoiling some book points here, but I get it, which is the story I wanted seems to be closer to the story that Stephen King wrote. And Brian, I know you read the book.
Yeah, I would agree with 100% of everything that he says in here. The story you're getting is it not only is not the story in the book, it is lacking many of the best parts of the book. And while I was optimistic to begin with that they were doing a good job of taking boring things he's doing and figuring out a way to characterize them and stuff, this episode just really pissed me off. It's like they committed his working friend to an insane asylum, and then he loses all of his memories. He doesn't even know that JFK is going to be assassinated, and he remembers, but then he's also a drug addict, and then also Sadie's the one, who doesn't know and is just politely, trying to talk into it. And then one day he just decides to shake his head and flex real hard and decide he doesn't need the pills anymore just in time to go see the ending of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
We did it in the 60s, Brian.
Right next to, an electro shocked out, brain fart falls out and kills himself. It was so nonsensical. And more importantly, with zero payoff. It made me feel like had I been more emotionally invested in these characters in this situation, I would have felt like a sucker left holding the bag at this point, where it's like, when you ask me to follow someone, when you ask me to care, and then you dispose of them in such an offhanded way that does nothing to progress the story, it does nothing but announce, and now this blockade is in his way, that is a disservice to the viewer. And I'm not angry, I'm just annoyed, and worse yet, the bigger crime is that I'm bored. I got 10, 15 minutes left, and I was like, I don't know, I guess he saves, they're counting down to him saving, we get it. He's going to remember and he's going to show up just in time, I assume. And I was like, I'll watch it tomorrow, or I don't need to watch it because I assume he saves him. And then I did watch it this morning, watch that last 15 minutes. And I was like, he didn't even save it. This was, in fact, I rescind everything I said about the Better Call Saul episode in that I was annoyed that it didn't progress as fast or as far as it could have. This didn't do anything. This is a step backwards. It was a total waste of all of our time. What do we get out of this episode?
Well, I was also bored. So I'm not going to disagree with you in total. However, him getting beat up and losing his memories, to me, felt perfectly motivated, right? Like, he overstepped, he broke the rules by betting too much and not realizing this guy was all over the city. And this is another way of the past pushing back against him, right? It makes him get beat up. When you get beat up and you have a concussion, you may lose some memory. He had short-term memory loss, not complete. So they didn't go full trope, I'm amnesia, who am I, right? Which would have been much worse. It was a believable type of difficulty. And so you knew that he was going to come back, and it's like, okay, here's one more struggle that the past is putting in his way to overcome. I liked the fact that Sadie was the one who actually knew things because he had confided in her. And so she was actually able to help him along. I do agree that Bill jumping out the window just sort of made that whole storyline of Bill feel like it was something that they thought they needed to give him something else to bounce off of when he wasn't with Sadie. But now that he's with Sadie, they could just kill Bill.
Exactly. It very much felt that way. And I feel like if you're going to make a departure for a book to accomplish a way to have dialogue options that wouldn't otherwise happen, I thought that was a pretty good way to do it by introducing another character. I thought it was a very an interesting twist to make that character part of the problem. I think the double twitch of like, oh, well, we fixed it once by throwing him in the thing. Oh, but now we don't want him in the thing. Oh, he's crazy and he killed himself. Well, I guess it's double fixed now. I mean, it's like...
Well, yeah, I thought him being committed and then him ended up suffering because of the accident was great. I'm like, yeah, see, Amberson, like, you thought you were being so clever committing him. Now you've hurt someone. But in the end... Amberson, Jake there's no repercussions.
Yeah.
Right? If you're going to tell that story,
actually,
Jake should be so distraught about what he has done to Bill that he can't go on. Or Jake should be accused of murder because they discover that he's not related to Bill. There should be some kind of repercussion, not like, oh, that's really sad. Well, let's go save JFK.
Tom, you missed the very real repercussions, which is as he's signing it, the doctor says, now you realize you're going to owe us all the money for the treatments you got.
And he signs it on that, too.
He signs it, and then he kills it. He's like, oh, man, all that expenses. I just signed it, and now it's all ruined. I just crashed the car out of the parking lot.
Money's not a big object for him anyway, so that's... I was like, that was very tragic and unexpected for him to jump out the window, but I'm not sure what it did.
As best I could tell, it wasted my time.
and I guess the real part of it was that Jake, like, he was upset for that scene, and then after that, it's like, here we go. I did think it was dramatic for Sadie to bring Jake to Lee Harvey Oswald's apartment. I liked that because freaking finally we get to see Lee Harvey Oswald interact with Jake. That's the drama that I've been waiting for. I thought it was a little stupid for Jake to go get a knife out of the kitchen. Like, Jake's smarter than that. That's not the way he would go about that. He would come back later. But I guess he's not all in his right mind, and he just remembered who Lee was. So I guess I could forgive that. But now he's not even going back to Lee. He's going to Dallas to the book depository. And we see Lee setting up with his curtain rods, getting ready to point him out the window. And we're set up finally for episode 8 to actually be about the assassination of JFK 11/22/63.
Yeah. It's I'm with Jackie Hearn in the chat. She says if he just once went back to the present and reset, I'd be happy. They set up, they belabored us with the fact that those are the rules. You know, they gave us that mechanic. He never uses it. Hey, Tom, guess what? There's only one episode left. Any ideas what Chekhov's utility are going to be used?
Well, before we get to that though, the whole thing about the guy with the yellow card showing up in his dream in the car was confusing as hell.
Okay, weirdly, I'm going to give him a pass on that because the yellow card man in the book, and minor spoilers from the book, in that dreamlike way, he sort of implies that he's maybe whatever forces created this portal maybe left some kind of sentinels to that vaguely are like radiation stickers. You walk into a radiation area and it changes color when you're encountering radiation. Maybe like that. It acknowledges when there's a problem or whatever. And that's all there is to it. So there's not much more but the reminder that he's abusing something when the yellow card man is there. I really liked the idea of Yellow Card Man being an actual character. And I thought that performance he gave, that little monologue where he was broken inside and just is, haunted by watching his daughter die again and again and again. I thought that was pretty good. Just unfortunately,
but it didn't
belong in this story. Yeah.
Like, this is the guy who supposedly knows how all this works, didn't tell Jake anything, didn't really do anything to convince Jake to stop, and came out of nowhere. This is a character we haven't seen in days. We haven't seen him since episode 2. Like if this guy had continually been showing up and we finally get to figure out his secret, then maybe I'm a little more interested. And like you said, the story he tells about his daughter is incredibly compelling, but it could just be a short vignette out on its own. It doesn't really, it doesn't seem to fit into the rest of the story for me. But yes, what was Chekhov's apple that you were mentioning?
Chekhov's gun is you can't have a gun in the first act without it going off in the third act. They certainly, the first episode, made a big deal about how often the butcher got his meat and how it resets every time, and he figured out all those rules. Just weird that they explained all those rule setting for no reason, and we only have one episode left.
Yeah.
Wonder what happens.
Do we get a second season?
I hope not.
I mean, all the talk of it being a mini-series or an event sounds like you wouldn't.
No, but this right now, it feels like the only reason you don't have him use that card is that it all goes to hell at episode 8 and he goes back to try again. When he goes back, he has changed things and it's horrible. And I don't know.
Well, and that's what I'm guessing it has to be, right? Is the elements that we're seeing, and they're so far from the book now. I don't even know that having read the book helps in any way, right?
Yeah.
I think maybe he does it. He is successful, or he's not successful, or there's some kind of montage of whatever, and then but that uses the reset mechanic, or I don't know.
Here, before we move on, because Brian and I are somewhat in accord on this, a note for those of you enjoying 11/22/63. You rock. You're awesome. It's great. Don't let our negativity get you down. Don't feel like, we are telling you that you're a bad person. If you're enjoying it, that's awesome. We're just giving you our honest opinions.
Yeah. As Scott Johnson said, if you loved Batman versus Superman, you're 100% right. If you hated it, you're 100% right.
Let's move on to something that maybe you hated, but both of us loved, Zootopia.
Who could hate Zootopia?
I don't know. That was a harder one for me to imagine, but there's room in this world for so many different kinds of things. I thought it was brilliant. As you mentioned in Cordkillers, it drags out all kinds of tropes, but then it holds them up and parades them around in a clever way. It says, look, it's a trope. We're going to poke a hole in it now.
Well, and plus, they figure out this amazing way for the tropes to perform double duty. First of all, in terms of world building, they do such a great job of taking you on a tour through the world, of making you understand the crazy logic, the rules for this world. I couldn't get enough of the subway going through and the different ways that they've manufactured a rainforest, that they've manufactured, that they have snow blowers for the tundra land and all that stuff. I wanted to play it as an MMO and just walk around and experience it. But being masters of pacing as they are, they didn't give me that time. They just kept on going. I thought the pacing was exquisite. It was great that the trope of the officer and the gentleman, you can't make it as a cop. Yeah, you're gonna fail. You're gonna die. That served the purpose of seeing what kind of steel she's made of. But it also, I don't know if you notice, exactly set up the stakes for the future adventure set pieces they had. They because she fell into the ice water and said, "You're dead. That will kill you." And because she fell in the training thing, like, you fell 1,000,000 miles down in the forest, you're dead. Then when those exact situations happen later on, and they don't hit you over the head of it, she's not there having a flashback. But you get it, man. Man, do they know how to write scripts. There's not an ounce of fat on that thing at all.
Well, and another thing that they did that I loved is every time you thought you knew what was about to happen, it didn't, right? So when the parents are like, "Oh, we're concerned about you, going to become a police person," it wasn't what it should have been was like, "But I guess it's what you love, so we're just going to try to wish you the best." It was like, you shouldn't do that. No, that's a horrible idea.
You should settle.
Why don't you just be a carrot farmer? Carrot farmer's great. Like, it was more realistic to me. And then when she does move to Metropolis and she calls them and she's complaining about being a traffic cop, they're like, meter maid, they're like, oh, what a relief. That's great.
She's not a real cop. Not a real cop.
Not a real cop. And again, both of these moments, the training parallelism and the attitude of the parents, these are little things. Like, these aren't like, and there are the two examples. Like, there are hundreds of examples of this kind of stuff littered throughout this script.
I loved the fact that there's just as The Incredibles. One of the things I loved about The Incredibles is, yes, it was a action movie that had kids and it was about superheroes, but what it was really about was the compromises and the choices of all the roads we don't go down in order to raise a family, and about how there comes a time in a man's life where he wonders what could be, and then this is why people leave their wife, why they have midlife crisis, why they cheat on them, and how women feel trapped. What is she going to do? I mean, it's like, that's
you're spoiling The Incredibles now.
That's dark, heavy stuff, and yet you find the same thing in Zootopia, where it's touching on the ideas of like, well, can you be anything? Or it's like, what kind of echoes are there of what you used to be? This socioeconomic, you know your station, know your place. That's their type, our tribe, the tribalism and all that stuff. I thought they do a great job of it not being heavy-handed, of it being in their world by their rules. So you don't have to say that's a one-to-one parallel of, those are this class and so on. And so you're overstepping your bounds. In their world, they're telling their story. But I loved the third act feels rushed, and it is rushed. A lot happens but we're trained with enough that they could tell a really great 20-minute hardcore crime drama about drug distribution on the streets, and about I think my favorite throwaway line was because it's not really clear who the bad guy is, and it's like, well, do I really buy J.K. Simmons, the mayor, as a bad guy? He's kind of too big of an idiot, and then they start using all the tropes again. Not overtly, but just subtle enough, giving us the chemicalization of it, taking a natural thing and making it weaponized. And it felt very Breaking Bad in that moment.
And we get Walt and Jesse.
That was the moment. Like
Amazing.
They give you just enough of that. I was the one person who cackled at that moment in the theater uncontrollably.
Eileen and I were like, "Oh my God, it's Walt! That's amazing!" And then it hit me that it's Doug.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was great. Anyway, tight movie. I cannot wait to watch it again. I can't wait till the kids watch it a million times over. Whatever cruel machinery that chews up human beings and spits out beautiful poetry they have at Disney, I'm glad that they're still rocking.
Yeah, back to the race relations part of this. They did a great job of treating prejudice, and you can look at it as an allegory for racism. You can definitely see a really difficult topic in the Black Lives Matter police brutality elements being included. But like you said, without pushing it up there and saying this is one-to-one correspondence, but I think more powerfully saying this could happen in any kind of relationship. And so, you need to understand this is how this sort of thing happens, because they didn't have whites and blacks. They had hundreds of animal species. So you couldn't be like, well, the bunnies are the white people because they're out in the farms, because you get that great moment where she's like, yeah, calling a bunny cute, that's kind of our word. You don't get to use that. And the best part about that is later on in the movie, I found myself involuntarily thinking, oh, she's so cute, and then feeling bad. Like, oh, right, I shouldn't call that because I'm not a bunny. That's not okay. But then obviously the fox had the same thing of like, oh, everybody thinks a fox is sly because we're foxes, and it's so elegantly done. I was amazed.
There was even, and maybe I was reading too much into it, but in that opening moment, that feel good when she's being suckered by Nick's scam that he's pulling, there's that moment where she's caught up with like, oh, I thought the wrong thing of you. I brought some preconceptions that I shouldn't have or whatever. And then she turns to the kids and the kids, oh, my kid loves elephants. He wants to grow up to be an elephant someday. Like, I almost felt like that was a nod to the emerging consciousness of trans awareness happening.
Sure.
Something that sounds like, well, you can't do that. It's like you want to be an elephant, you be an elephant. I don't know. I thought it was just really clever, really sensitive, and so much fun. Smart.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree. So yeah, go see Zootopia. You'll have a good time. It's filled with goofy little in-jokes about things like Breaking Bad. as well as really subtle and elegantly done social commentary, and all fun, all in a fun story.
Yeah.
Let's talk about another fun story. Justified, episode 11 of season 1. Raylan?
It was justified. I watched the full disclosure. I watched this just very shortly before the program. I kept pausing it because I was trying to do other stuff while I was on, and it kept grabbing my attention, which I think is a good thing to say. I'm curious into where we're moving. I think we are now in the midst of no longer a procedural. Yeah. Now there will be things to do each episode, but very clearly we're seeing characters progress, and we're starting to see the chess match develop. It'll be really interesting to see what's Shane Vendrell's name in this again? Boyd. So Boyd has been very, very cartoony, and still is very, very cartoony with his holier than thou, I'm now an awakened whatever person thing. And it's silly. You know, his accent's over the top, his slow talk, and his Bible thumping is all so much that the cops think it's all just a painfully transparent ruse. And this was the episode that we start to see his flock like, oh no, he's not a gangster. He's a genuine cult leader because he has true believers. This is the first time we've seen people say, oh yeah, no, we believe him. That's why we're out here. But we've seen people say, you saved my soul. I owe you everything. We've seen people commit murders at his behest because it's what needs to be done. We've seen, and at the end, we see someone take a fall in order to take Boyd out of the equation. And the best part is, and this is what I'm starting to enjoy about the show, more important than us seeing it, because we've already suspected that, maybe he does have true believers, but you see the transformation in all the cops when the guy comes in and gives them up, and they realize, man, maybe we're dealing with something more than a bumpkin, a two-bit one-time murderer. Maybe someone's got them. And we also see him pushing back against his dad. I'm thrilled to be seeing progress here.
That's funny, because I felt like this was very little progress when I watched it. I felt like it was like, oh, we're finally in the story arc, but we're really not seeing anything happen yet. But you've pointed out some really good places where there is progress in a kind of a meta way, as far as like solidifying Boyd, solidifying Bo, his dad's relationship with Raylan's dad, and even solidifying Bo's relationship with Ava, who he's kind of stalking in the bar, but is perfectly upfront about it. And you're right, the police starting to realize that maybe they got the wrong end of the handle regarding Boyd, and they're not as smart as they think they are. But it all felt like setup to me. Like we're gonna stop doing Monster of the Week here, and we're gonna bring in all the threads, but we're not quite pulling them together. And being only 2 episodes away from the end of the season, I assume that's going to be more thread pulling next week, and then some big event in the last episode.
Here's how you know that the story is doing its job. And yes, I could agree that there's a bit of place setting happening here, but I would say from this point forward, certainly in this episode, I found myself at any given time, I could press pause and I could point to any 2 characters on screen and explain what they wanted that was different from what the other person wanted.
For sure.
And that's an important thing, because it gives us automatic context to any of the awesome situations we're dealt from now on.
There's no throwaway characters that are spent any time on. I mean, there's tons of throwaway characters that come through and give the rote response that Boyd taught them. And we have somewhat of a throwaway character in the past who's now the weak link that Raylan uses by the BS story about how he's a deputy and he has to talk. But we met him before, and we know he's a screw up. So we even know him. We're like, oh yeah, you're that guy who's not too smart and easily taken advantage of. And now Raylan's taking advantage of you instead of the sheriff from before. And we even got the sheriff pulled in a way that was entirely believable. Of like, Raylan, I'm the hero of my own story. Like, I was doing the right thing. I was protecting Harlan because those drugs didn't stop in Harlan, right? It's just very thick in that kind of stuff. You're right.
This is the first episode that I've had this parallel thought, and I don't know how long it'll hold up, but it felt to me like for the first time, I was seeing something different. I was seeing Tyler Durden take Fight Club into Project Mayhem, and I was seeing his Space Monkeys showing increased commitment to the cause. And, what was, a cathartic experience becomes a religious one for people. I don't know.
Almost literally in Boyd's case, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I still think that I'm leaning towards the fact that I don't think Boyd, who, not unlike many cult leaders, doesn't really buy his own BS, but is allowing himself to live in it enough that he can sell it 100%. Because otherwise, he's got to talk both languages, basically. He's got to have enough of his con man self to be able to convince those guys to give that rote response. But he also has to believe his own stuff enough to convincingly sell it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Dude, well, go ahead. All of you suggesting we watch this show, that response was thoughtful.
Yeah, it was justified.
Stop.
I'm just saying, their suggestion.
No, stop. We're addicted. Accurate. We have a problem.
Budgeted. We'll spoil it next time.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.